taking action on your creative ideas and what can spawn from those, because there's a reason. To me, if you have a creative idea, there's a reason you have that. You don't need to know why, you don't need to know how, but there's a reason you had that. And if you take action, there's going to be things that happen on the backside that you could never even imagined.
Welcome to the Creative Chats Podcast with Mike Brennan. Welcome, friends, to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artists, makers, and content creators, where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. You can connect with me over on Instagram. I'm at MikeBone, or you can connect with me on my website, which is mikebrennan.me. I would love for you to be a part of our Daily Creative Habit online community found over on Facebook. It is free, and it is filled with people who are creators of all types. And everyone there wants to show up more consistently so that they can produce better work and get that work out into the world. Whether it's for a hobby or for profession, we are creators and we need each other. And so this is a great community to be able to come alongside each other, encourage each other, learn from each other. And I want to extend that to you. Simply go to dailycreativehabit.com. You will see some resources there, and you can click on join the Facebook group. I also want to point out that you can sign up for the Daily Creative Habit email newsletter. It's absolutely free. No one loves to get more and more email. Believe me, I'm in that camp too, but you certainly don't mind it when you get something of value. And that's what I believe that the Daily Creative Habit email newsletter is. It is valuable because I'm sharing all sorts of resources and ideas and creative prompts that can help you on your creative journey. So go to dailycreativehabit.com for that as well. And lastly, I want to invite you to grab a copy of my new book, Make Fun a Habit. And you can go to makefunahabit.com, where I've set up all sorts of resources there as well. There is a fun Spotify playlist that is free. There are free coloring pages you can download, as well as free Mad Lib types, fill in the blank. I call them Fun Libs. And there are also some other resources there available for you, as well as links to get a signed copy of the book in either paperback or hardcover, or if you wish, you can also order it from Amazon.com. Go to makefunahabit.com and grab your copy today. Hey friends, today I'm bringing to you a guest, Sean Osborn, who is a personal friend of mine. He's a mental performance and business coach, a entrepreneur, podcaster. I mean, he is just all around creative in the sense of he sees things that he wants to accomplish and then sets out and creates them. We talk about the importance of resilience and of resourcefulness and creativity. We talk about mindset and the tie to creativity and the importance of being able to see something, have a vision for your life. And I just love when I get a chance to talk with Sean. It's always encouraging, and he's always pushing to be the best version of himself. And as he does that, he invites others to do that as well alongside him. And so I always find it very encouraging to be able to have these conversations, to watch what he's doing, to learn from him. And so I'm excited to bring this conversation to you today. So without further ado, here is my creative chat with Sean Osborn. Sean, welcome to the Creative Chats Podcast. Dude, this is exciting. I'm glad you're here, my friend.
Man, it is good to be here, Mike. I'm glad to be on your show with creativity. Even though I'm not an artist, I like to be creative, and I think it's so important. So I'm glad to be on here.
Yes. You know, it's been fun just getting to know you over the past couple of years in the context of masterminds and just a fellow entrepreneur, seeing what you're doing, how you're doing things. You know, you have a way of just pursuing something and being transparent with things as you're pursuing it and encouraging people who are kind of come alongside you. And so I just appreciate that about you. And we're going to get into some of those things today and talk about what that looks like specifically. But I'm enjoying seeing what you're doing. So again, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, and it's been a fun ride. So we've known each other God, what, 3 or 4 years now through,
Yeah, I think
what you
so.
said,
Yeah.
the mastermind groups and various things for us to grow, which is such a huge thing. But I thought today we were teaching Sean how to draw. Is that not what we're doing?
Well, we could shift gears here. It'll be a little challenging with the audio version of this podcast, but yeah, that'd be funny.
I can draw. I can draw a mean stick man. Let me tell you.
Hey, man, sometimes that's all you need. It's getting an idea out there. So I always love to open these things by just, instead of me just kind of yammering on about who somebody is and all that kind of stuff, I love to just throw it back to my guest and say, if you're at a party or you're meeting some people for the first time in a place and they're like, hey, who are you? What do you do? Like, what's your answer to those questions?
I am the crazy person that your mom told you never to hang out with growing up. I'm just that's who I am. I do dumb stuff well, but I always seem to do dumb stuff. My wife doesn't like my dumb things, but yeah, that's me. So I always enjoy things. I always enjoy life. I always try making things fun. That's just who I am, and it's just it's part of what drives me.
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking like you have to have some t-shirts made.
Yeah, hashtag your mom doesn't want. I literally had friends growing up like, yeah, you can't hang out with Sean anymore.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm sure that's something that is rooted in a curiosity, right? And something that is because I know that you love to explore ideas, you love to explore just growth, right? Learning knowledge. And so I'm sure it's so much of that was just, in a quest for, okay, let me get a new experience. Let me understand something more. Let me do something different. How has that actually served you in your life? And not in a way that's like, hey, don't hang out with Sean, but like in a good way.
So I think I was somewhat forced into being very creative and being very resourceful. I think creativity and resourcefulness go hand in hand. And I think that's really what drives everything is, it's never the resources. When we're stuck in anything, it's never the resources. It's always, how can I be more resourceful to get where, I need to go? And a lot of that was, I hate to say it, but it was almost forced upon me. Part of my story is like, at 15, I was on my own. I was homeless and I kicked out of school. I was the, poster child for don't do drugs, which also goes hand in hand why my friend's parents said, don't hang out with Sean. They were smart. Very good reason. But that actually drove things. That was probably the best thing that ever happened in my life, because to me, we don't grow when we're successful. We don't grow from good things. We don't, when something good happens, we grow shit. We don't get anything from it. Absolutely nothing, right? It's just, we won. Yeah, great. We win and we grow when we fail. And I was forced to fail at a level that made me become resourceful, made me become really who I am today. That's why I think it's, that whole part of my life was really the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because I did have to become very creative, very resourceful. If you think about it, 15, there's not a lot of opportunities out there for a 15-year-old, dropout with, that's not living anywhere. It's not a lot out there, and you become resourceful. You become, you find ways to move ahead, and you find ways to be creative and survive. And so I think at a very base level, that portion of my life taught me so much about creativity and resourcefulness and how much we have to have that regardless of where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think hand in hand with resourcefulness is probably resiliency, right? Because you have to be able to have a tenacious spirit to keep going and to figure things out in the face of repeated setbacks and failures, right?
Yeah, I sometimes I like to say I was too stupid to fail. I was too naive. So I think part of the gift was I was, basically voluntold to get out of school in 9th grade before I knew what I was supposed to be able to do and what I was not supposed to be able to do. So in other words, I think I got out at the perfect time, is for me at least, was I didn't know that I couldn't do the things that I did. I went and, part of the backstory, I went and grew a, multi-million-dollar tech company by 30. And it's like, in my mind, I didn't, and people would always say, Sean, you're a 9th grade dropout. How in the world do you ever do something like, how do you do that? I'm like, I never knew you weren't supposed to be able to do that. That you just go and do it. You be creative and you be resourceful, and that's what you go and do. So I think I got out at a time that was good for me because I wasn't programmed with, yeah, Sean, you can't do that. You can't just go into these, investment groups and say you need money. I mean, that's just not how it works. And I'm like, but that's how I did it. That's what I did. And so I think that was a great time to not be programmed with what we can and what we can't do, or what's expected and what's not expected.
Right. Yeah. I would think that, sometimes people say, well, learn the rules so then you know how to break them. Right. But I think on another side of that is, if you don't know the rules, then you're also not carrying any, I don't want to say imposter syndrome, but like a sense of, well, if I do this, I'm not going to be the norm. And a certain pressure, I think, that comes with that, and knowing, well, I know the rules and I know what's supposed to happen. I know how I'm supposed to show up, and that kind of whole back pressure. But I think you having said, you didn't know what you didn't know, that actually gives you a freedom to go, what do you want to do? Right.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want it to look like? Right.
Yeah. And it goes back to that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And if there's rules imposed upon you that, oh, you're not supposed to be able to do that, you've already failed. You've already mentally, on a subconscious level, said, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. Even though consciously you might not say, okay, I'm not going to do that. But on a subconscious level, people saying, oh, you can't do that, it stops people from doing things that they really can. It's a self-imposed limitation that these rules. I say, screw rules. There are no rules. We create whatever we want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's about vision, right? It's about investing in yourself enough, right? And I think that's probably why, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but why leadership is so important to you, right? And mindset, right? Because I'm sure that you saw, even from an earlier age, the importance of having those skills and that kind of mindset. It probably made all the difference for you, right?
Yeah. And again, I think I was just too stupid to fail or not to know. But I knew back then that I had to grow. I didn't know how. I didn't know. I didn't have any training. I didn't have any people that said, here's what you need to do. Here's you need to find mentors. You need to find these things. So I kind of stumbled upon a lot of that stuff by sheer luck or sheer accident. I would early on, I would have what I now call is like silent mentors, like people that I would see and would see what they were doing. I would see how they were doing it. And I always thought to myself, well, if they can do that, then I can do that. They're not, they're human just like me. They're not superhuman. So it's like I found mentors to be able to grow myself, even though they didn't know that they were mentoring me. And then eventually got to a point where I then had, obviously I had mentors and knew what personal development was and knew what growth was. I can tell you this, had I known the importance of personal development and our mindset growth and how much that affects us, I could have done twice as much, twice as quick. I mean, that's how important that is. And, sometimes we just, we kind of fall upon it and it happens. And, but again, if I would have known back then, I would have been so much further ahead. And this is what I wish in schools, that they trained these types of things, creativity, art, all these things are such an important thing to grow our creativity in our minds, that's really where it's at. If they taught personal development and, all these arts and, all these things that they seem to be pulling out of schools, we would be way, way better off than we are now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too, because thinking about, just this idea of personal growth and investing in yourself, and then even creativity. Like, one of the things that I think was a benefit for me in going to an art school was, and in this particular school that I went to, two of them in New York City, it was always encouraging this creative thinking, right? Concepts. It wasn't just about how you execute something. It wasn't just about rendering, a talent, a skill to draw or design or whatever. Like, those things were always in support of something bigger, right? Like, what do you want to say? What's your voice? Like, have an opinion. And I think that was something that was a gift for me, but not a lot of people have that, or nor see that connection. And I'm just wondering, like, what what do you see when you look at personal development and creativity? Like, how does one affect the other there, and how can that actually, how can we harness that for something better?
Yeah. So I think, again, I think everything we have, every success we have starts with creativity. Point blank. If we don't see something outside of our current reality, in other words, I know what my reality looks like right now. At 15, I was homeless, I was broke, I was not eating. But until I use creativity to think outside of that box, until I saw myself literally outside of that scenario, nothing will change.
Mhm.
Nothing changes in life unless we see it in our head, in our mind's eye, whatever, however you want to call it. But until we see it, we're never going to have it. Until you and that's really where the hardest part is it's hard to be creative outside what our current reality is, because our
Mm.
current reality, it's hard to, if you're in the mailroom of a company, it's hard to envision and be in the same a vibration level, the same frequency of the CEO. You haven't been there. You don't see that. It's outside of your reality. It's outside of your current concepts of life. But until you do use creativity and see outside that and live outside that and where that vibration is, you're not going to have it. So I think it goes hand in hand that we will never, ever be successful without being creative. It
Mm.
just won't happen, because that's part of the process.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say to someone who is thinking like, okay, I would love to be able to envision myself in some place that's much bigger, someplace that's more down the road than where I am now, but I don't have a frame of reference for it. So it's hard for me to see. It's hard for me to imagine myself in that position, or with that certain amount of money, or with whatever the accolades, or whatever the thing is that they're wanting. How does somebody bridge that gap?
So there's many ways to do that, and a lot of people will, you'll see people doing affirmations, you'll see people doing vision boards, you'll see people doing all these things to creatively see themselves and talk to themselves in a way that's outside their current level, right? And I think those are very important. I teach one thing that's called acting big, which to me is way more powerful than affirmations. It's way more powerful than vision boards. It's literally acting as if you already were there. You get in that vibration, you get in that feeling, you see those things, you experience it with all of your senses, because again, everything we have is through our senses. It encompasses all of them, and it makes it that much more powerful when you're going to do these affirmations, or when you're trying to grow. And they don't have to be big things. I mean, your subconscious is always watching. It's always listening. It's always doing things. So, for instance, creativity. Let's say you want to have more financial abundance, right? That's something that most people want. One of the ways that one of my mentors used to do, and I used to start doing it, was every time we went out to like a lunch meeting, or like a meeting for lunch, like a business lunch, he would always be a huge tipper and smile, huge tipper, smile. So I started, whenever I went out to dinner or out to lunch, I would actually add another 5-10% on the bill, and just internally in my mind say, well, luckily I'm rich. Luckily I have plenty of money. Luckily I am gifted with everything that I need. And what that does is, I know that's such a small thing and it doesn't sound like much, but it's using creativity to think, and it's telling your subconscious mind, this is what I want. This is what's important. This is
Mhm.
this is what makes me feel good. This is what and your subconscious mind will literally go and find ways to do that.
Yeah.
And like the other day, I heard something from Steve Harvey, which I love Steve Harvey. He has some amazing like personal development stuff if you go up and search for him. But he was like, just once, next time you're going to apply, upgrade to first class. And he says, and it's 100% true. He says, because what's going to happen is you're gonna love it. It's going to make you feel good, and subconsciously, it will find a way to do that and bring more of that to you. So that's how you act big. And it's not going broke, it's not doing things, but it's using creativity to find ways to get in that vibration of the people or of the things that you're wanting to be.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point about like your mind starts looking for these things, right? Because you've told it this is what's important, right? I think the same thing is true with gratitude, right? I've experienced that over the past year or two, where I have the 5 minute journal, which is the gratitude journal, and it's just writing something in the morning of like setting intention, and then reflecting at night really quickly. These little things of identifying some things in your day that you're grateful for, things that you, what would make a great day, like, and then at the end of the day, like, well, what were 3 highlights of today? Like, all these questions that you're asking yourself, and you're reflecting, and you're being intentional about that process, makes you more aware, and then makes you see more of that, and then makes you feel more gratitude. It's this ever growing type of thing. So I totally understand what you're talking about in that regard. And it's like this creative snowball that just, once you start it and you get past that, this is stupid, right? The eye roll, I can eye roll really hard. I mean, being from New York, it's like, right? But I think once, if that's your kind of default, once you get past that and you go, you know what, let me try this. What do I have to lose? Right. And you make yourself open. I think that's key. Then you can really start experiencing some amazing things, right?
Yeah. And you talked about stuff that, like, the eye rolls when people talk about this stuff. And for a long time, this is some woo-woo crap. I mean, literally, this is woo-woo. This is out there. But the funny thing is science is catching up with woo-woo. So if you look at NLP and you look at the neuroscience and stuff that's happening, the funny thing is they're starting to match up really damn close. And it's not just a woo-woo thing. There is science behind this. You can literally go into, it's not an MRI, but where they can tap into your brain and see all your brain frequencies. And they can do these things and see the effects that they have on you. And it's not just woo-woo stuff anymore. I mean, there's literally science behind, being grateful. There's science behind, doing affirmations and things like that truly make things happen. It's not just and here's the funny thing. I think we've known about this stuff for a long time. And I think we have forgotten most of this over the last 1,000 years. Who knows when, but I think this is stuff that we've always known. And that's why you see some of this, old writings and this, these philosophies of things. And it's like, we've lost touch with it. But now science is catching up, and it's not woo-woo stuff. It's truly, we truly create, and I say create because creativity, we create the life that we have.
Yeah. And it's, if you want to have different experiences, you have to do different things. And so I think, even if, again, your default is one of skepticism, pushing yourself, going, I want to be open, I want to experience something new and different. It allows you to enter into that. I would love to explore a little bit of your own creativity, and just more in terms of process, right? So you've created you've created companies, you've created a book, you've created a podcast, you create talks, right? For speaking, all these things that you create. At the root of it, like, what does your creation process look like? Is it the kind of thing that you envision what it is that you want, and then you go systematically kind of attacking it, almost like a start with the end in mind and then, reverse? Or is there more of an organic type of thing at work where you're like, I know what it is that I want to create, but I'm really being open in the process to see what forms and what comes?
Yeah, so I think that is a fantastic question, Mike, because I think that's really at the root of kind of how we get to where we want to go. For me, it is getting down to what I call my soul goal. What is my ultimate goal for life? And once I have that, what I call a soul goal, once I know what I want to do, where I want to be, who I want to be with, what's happening around me, I see it clear as day, as this is my life in 10 years, right? So I know this. I backtrack that, and everything I do, if it's not leading me to that, then I don't do it. But here's the thing, from a creativity standpoint, I never, ever know how I'm going to do something. And I think that's to me, that's part of the creative process, because if I already knew how, I would already be doing it, right? So I think that's so for me, part of the creative process is listening to intuition, listening to things that are happening, and paying attention to the world that allow me to have those ideas, to be those creative. Those ideas have been around for centuries, right? The ideas that I'm being creative about, I'm just tapping into those by being open and being by continually growing. So as I grow and I do more and do things, I become aware I become aware of these things that are out there. So I never really go and say, okay, I want to write a book, or I want to do this, this workshop, or I want to do, this. It's always, I know what my goal is. I know I know from a soul level what drives me and what makes me feel whole. And those seem to fall in place. And I know but you have to use, and I can't explain it. You have to use creativity to see those things falling in place, because we all have a million things going on in our head as we're seeing things. But the creativity, to me, the creativity portion of it is identifying and actually seeing those and pulling those in and accepting them as, okay, yeah, I do need this. Now this makes sense. Now I know I need to go write a book. And then you get into kind of the details of, how you do that. And you mentioned this in, when you're talking about going to, the art schools, the hows on, you draw a line here, you shade a little here. Again, I'm not an artist, I'm embarrassing myself, but you shade a little here. That's just some technique. That's, that's nothing. What they teach you is how to look beyond that technique. And that, to me, that's how you get your own style. I know I know your style whenever I'm scrolling on Facebook or any other medium. I know, oh, that's Mike, because you have a style that you've used your creativity to build. That wasn't taught in school. That line, otherwise every piece of art would look like every other piece of art.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And that comes from putting in the work. It comes from knowing yourself, right? Being a student of yourself. Knowing, kind of like what you said before, knowing what you like and knowing something on a soul level to go like, this is what resonates with me. This is what feels intuitive to me. I'm going to pay attention to that. And things, even if it's wildly different than what somebody else is doing, there's value in that because this has my fingerprints on it. And so I don't shut that down, but I look to see how can I actually pour gas on that and elevate that, because that's something that's probably uniquely me. And if I can incorporate that into what I'm doing and what I'm creating, then I'm going to see things that'll be more aligned and authentic and will resonate with others more, I think, too, right?
And I think that's one of the important things that you really got out of the art school. And I think that's the thing that's missing from most education now. It's not the physical art. It's not, but it's the learning to think creatively and think outside of, our current reality. It's being able to vision those things and see those things. Because at least for me, you probably don't start really anything until you kind of see a picture. You might not have all the detail, but you see a picture in your mind. It's like, okay, I want to do this. It's like, that's the process. To me, that's the magic. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily the drawing. Of course, that is an amazing skill. I could never do that, but the magic is being able to see it and envision it and use the creativity to do that.
Yes. Yeah. And really, where what we're highlighting is it's the thinking. It's the coming up with ideas, standing at a whiteboard or imagining what could be, and then going, okay, I'm thinking about what could be. Now I'm ready for it to be. How do we get there? And sometimes that is, it's another thing I learned in art school is sometimes you learn a new skill because you need to try to figure out how to execute this thing. Sometimes you tap a friend and say, hey, I need to borrow your skill. I'm going to hire you, or I'm going to hire out for this. Or sometimes it's, a combination of things of just, you just figure it out. You don't let those roadblocks stand in the way of a great idea coming to life. You figure it out. And I think that is certainly something that not a lot of people talk about today, at least from what I can tell. And there is a lot of talk on the actual rendering and production and in progress, but not necessarily in those ideas and going, what is something that could be that isn't right now? Like the true innovation,
Yeah, and I think one of the big things for that, at least so from a business standpoint of being creative, so as we do the things that we're talking about, we do this personal development and we grow, we're sending these what I call vibrations out to the universe. I know this is sounding maybe a little woo-woo, but we're sending out vibrations of what we want to the universe. And our job from a conscious mind standpoint, from the conscious standpoint, is to pay attention. We're putting all this stuff out. I want these ideas. Here's what I want. But yet we get these ideas. And again, to me, that is part of creativity. So we get these ideas. Oh, you should create this, or, oh, Sean, call this person, and we say to ourselves, that's stupid. That'll never work. And we shut down that creativity. That, to me, that link is part of the creativity. And, sometimes it takes, what they say, sometimes, those ideas come down as a feather and sometimes a 2x4.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'll get an idea and I'm like, nah, that doesn't make sense. And then finally it's like, bam, hits you in the head. It's like, Sean, go do this stuff. And that, to me, again, I think that is the part of creativity, at least from a business standpoint. And I think maybe even from an art standpoint, but that's the part that gives you that new technique to use, or gives you that new idea to put in there. But if we always say, that'll look stupid, that'll, no one will buy something like that, or, that's not art, or whatever it is. It's like, we've got to pay attention when we get those, when we have that intuition of the things that, because the only things we get intuition about are things that we're putting out to the universe and things that we're trying to get back. And if we don't pay attention to that, you're not going to go anywhere. To me, that every idea that I've ever got that has moved me forward was from obviously being creative and putting this stuff out there and creatively thinking, but then listening to the answer and implementing, taking action on those things that I'm seeing, those things that I'm hearing, those visions that I'm having.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if there's been an experience you've had where, in creating something, and I'll let you fill in the blank as far as what that might be, whether it's your book or the podcast or whatever, but in creating something, you had a surprise in the process, and that could be a good surprise of like, wow, this was something that I didn't really see coming, which was amazing result of my creativity. Or on the flip side, here's something that I didn't anticipate in the creation process that really was a challenge, or maybe this didn't quite fully get created to what I saw in my head.
Yeah, and that goes back to never try to figure out how something's going to happen, because we could how ourselves to death, and the second we try to figure out how we're going to get somewhere or how we're going to do something, that's going to shut it down. So, just as an example, I started my podcast the only reason I started my podcast, honestly, was because I was petrified to get in front of people and talk. Literally petrified to get in front of people and talk. So I thought, well, I'm going to start a podcast. It's not video, it's only audio. And on a weekly basis, I'm going to force myself to just talk and say stuff and do things, right? That's the only reason I did it. But there's things so by taking that action though, on that idea that I had, so again, creativity said, hey, Sean, let's do a podcast. So by taking action on that, the things that have come from that I had no idea, my list, my email list is well over 100,000 now for distribution. I've got, the podcast is hit, top 20 entrepreneur podcasts in 52 countries this year. Mm-hmm. So I never, and again, if I would have come to this and said, okay, I want to develop something that's going to be, a top 10 podcast, or I'm going to get something that I would have never done it. So to me, that's the magic of taking action on your creative ideas and what can spawn from those, because there's a reason, to me, if you have a creative idea, there's a reason you have that. You don't need to know why, you don't need to know how, but there's a reason you had that. And if you take action, there's going to be things that happen on the backside that you could never even imagined.
Mm, yeah. And that goes back to the openness, right? It's going, I have the sense of what it is that I want to do. I have a sense of who I am, but I'm leaving room, and there might be something even better than what you have imagined. And if you're too stuck on something, I think you can miss things that are happening right in front of you, or that might want to happen. And yet, because you're so fixated on something, it just goes right by you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's like the creativity side of it is just such a big thing. And it's, God, I wish. So when I look back, now I've never been per se an artist, but I've done art things, which is funny. I say I'm not an artist, but I used to paint motorcycles, like just for fun. I would literally, the flames on motorcycles, I would hand paint those with airbrushes, and Willie G. Davidson actually bought a pair of, a set of the skins, or the metals that for his bike from one of my paintings. But I never considered myself an artist, even though that is true. That is art, but I've never considered myself an artist. But it was during those times when I was doing those things that some of my biggest business ideas came to me.
Yeah.
And so to me, there is a relationship between purposely being creative, even if it's completely outside. Painting motorcycles had nothing to do with what I was doing, right? I just had an idea. Hey, this would be fun. I had a motorcycle. I'm like, I'm too cheap to pay Joe to paint my bike. I'm going to do it myself. And I started doing it and loved it and had fun. But there was a reason that I did that. And when I was doing those things, that creativity over here was ultimately opening up ideas over here from the business standpoint.
Yeah.
And it's very weird to go back and look at that and look at it in that light, but it definitely opened up other ideas, possibilities, even though they had nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where it comes down to the brain science stuff. And it's amazing because, I have these conversations sometimes with people who are in corporate or organizations, and they're like, that's great art stuff. Okay, whatever. But that has nothing to do with what we're doing. And, and that's where I'm like, well, I don't want my background as a visual artist and my artistic sense to be a liability. And what I'm like, I get into conversations and say, it's really not about that. It's really about creativity and how it's expressed. And sometimes it's expressed through, yes, the quote arts, right? And other times it's expressed through problem solving and through innovation and a lot of things that show up more in a business context. And yet to see the value of, we're a whole person, right? Like sometimes you need to take a break when you're in your corporate job or you're in your organization and you're pushing for that business solution, and you're pushing, and nothing is happening and nothing's coming, and you're just doing the same things over and over again. Sometimes you need that break to go, I'm going to just let this just be on pause for a minute. And I'm going to go over here and do something that's not related. And like you said, you're then activating a different part of your brain. You're then doing something that you've taken the pressure off, because you're not trying to solve this really big, scary problem. You're simply enjoying something that you're doing. And that puts you more in a relaxed state. It puts you more in this open state of creativity. And it's not like creativity is going to say, well, I'm sorry, you're on your personal time right now. This isn't work time, so we're not going to give you any work ideas right now, right? Like that doesn't happen. And that's why we get those ideas that sometimes are like the breakthrough moments when we're not even trying, right? The ideas in the shower, the ideas when we go for a walk, because we're allowing ourselves to have room for creativity to flow in a different manner.
Yeah. And it's like, so to me, an innovative solution is no different than a painting. It's no different. You're using creativity to solve a problem, to create something, right? So to me, it is at its basic level, there is no difference between painting a innovation solution, right? And painting a painting. And by going and doing other sorts of creativity, like drawing, doodling, whatever it is, to me, that's like doing blocking and tackling for football. It's like, if you don't let your players do the, blocking and tackling and some of the, just the stuff that you have to do, you're never going to be good on the field. I mean, you've got to have you've got to be utilizing that muscle, that creativity muscle, in every way you can in order for it to be effective. So when you need it to create innovative ideas for your company, you have that muscle built. It's not something that's foreign to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything that you can think of that you're like, here's something that I would really love to create that I haven't yet? Some taking some new ground in a different category, or something that you imagine that you're like, this is something I would love to see maybe in the next year, 5 years, whatever.
Yeah. So one of my big visions was to get onto big stages. Like I want to help influence people. I want to help grow, the stuff that I teach on, personal development and mindset development. And I want to get on big stages. That's a vision that I have. So that's led to, again, that creative idea. I accepted it. Like, okay, well, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't like getting on stages. I don't like that stuff. I'm not good at that yet. But let's run with that vision and see what we can do. So like, for instance, the last 9 months, I've been going up to New Jersey to go to a place called Heroic Public Speaking, which teaches you to, teaches you performing and public speaking, which again is a much more creative thing than I ever thought. I thought you'd go and here's my PowerPoint, and I'm going to do I'm going to do this little presentation as my talk. It's not what it is. It's actual creativity and building and performing and being in that energy of what you're talking about. So it's just things like that. It's like when you open yourself up, when you accept a vision that you have or something that you want, just be open to the ways to get there. Don't think that you know the ways, because if you knew the ways, you'd already be there. So stay open to those creative ideas. And it's like, and remember I said it's either, sometimes it's a 2x4, sometimes it's a feather when you get these ideas. Mm-hmm. It's like that, going to a public speaking school. I didn't know what those were. I didn't know they existed. But it's like, and just in a fleeting moment, someone, matter of fact, in a mastermind said, "Hey, I was at public speaking, public speaking." And it's like, that's to me the creative where I said, boom, that's the feather that came down and said, "Sean, you need to go look at that," instead of, "Sean, that's stupid. You'll never, why would you go to a public speaking school?"
Yeah.
It's being open to those ideas that we get.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Love it. And creativity just breeds possibility, and possibility ushers in a life that sometimes we could never imagine, or well beyond what we can imagine. And so I think that's a great place to be. Just open, and like you said, just really open-handed with the how, have a vision, know yourself. This has been such a tremendous conversation today. I love this. And I love just your pursuits of just continually pouring into yourself, encouraging other people, wanting to be that influence, which you are, and you just continue to be more and more so. And I'd love for you to just share a little bit about your podcast and where people can listen, lay some links on us for where people can find you and follow along with you.
Sure. Yeah. The best place to find me is just thinkingbigpodcast.com. That'll take you to the main podcast page, or thinkingbigcoaching.com. But the podcast is a great place to go. I've got a lot of links there, a lot of episodes for people to listen to. Again, it's mostly for mindset development, and there's a lot of creativity type stuff in there from a mindset standpoint on, getting further. To me, my whole job for doing what I'm doing is to get people further faster. And it takes creativity to get there. But thinkingbigpodcast.com is the best link.
Awesome. Sean, my friend, it's been so good to have you here today. And I know that people are going to enjoy listening to more of your stuff on your podcast, getting to know you better. And thank you again for just all you do, how you show up in the world, and looking forward to hanging out soon.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me on. And it's been great. I love talking about this stuff.
Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.